These works are the actual stories of the women telling me their story. The reason I chose to go two-dimensional and then three-dimensional and actually have the story, not just the canvases, is because it's quite difficult to get into what is actually occurring in the canvases. It's not really straightforward exactly what's going on, but it was important to me to actually tell these physical stories and most importantly bring the voice into the space. The fact that there's a group of women as well making a noise talking about really personal things. Primary material used throughout the whole show is condemned hospital linen. So once linen is unfit for use in the hospital system, it then leaves the system, if you like, and is incinerated. So I kind of intervene in that process. So there's hospital sheets, so bed sheets for these works, and bed sheets for 3 hours, 20 minutes. And then the comforters are female hospital gowns from the Queensland Health System. This body of work consists of 12 canvases, and each canvas represents the life of a mother who has passed away. Most of my practice is about bringing these private things into this public space. This particular canvas here is my mother's story, one square for every year of her life. And you'll notice on all the sheets, the final years of their life are all populated with a number because the numbers represent some form of trauma from the memory. So the sheets are stained, so they're stained by the processes of sickness and also the medical processing. And the sewing, there's obviously this strong connection to women's work, and there was conscious decisions made to frame each individual grid with its relationship and the history of minimalism and painting and its place in the galleries as a very male-dominated industry. Death becomes this taboo, and women's stories become this taboo that have been excluded. These kind of social conversations have been excluded from public places. Making really conscious decisions in this body of work to frame the canvases, I'm in direct conversation there with the history of painting being dominated by men and history with a capital H being dominated by patriarchy and men as artists and women as not being part of that space. This work is kind of fun, but it also has obviously a fairly dark undertone, which I think you get when you're in it. You kind of feel claustrophobic, and these little strings are relentless. They kind of trap you in the space. This was the first work that I made with the sheets.
So 62 sheets, which is the number of years that my mother lived. So in this work, I took
a sheet for every year of her life and tore it into strips for the 3 hours, 20 minutes. So the sound that you can hear in the work is the performance of me tearing the strips for 3 hours, 20 minutes as that way of trying to reconnect. I do a lot of my practice. I expose parts of myself that people don't normally see. And I am quite a private person, so it's kind of strange that I do that, and I'm sort of a kind of standoffish person as well. So it's a weird sort of tension in my personality that I make this highly personalised art. But I think it's important to talk about these issues, and that's why I bring them into the space. This work is Lamentation. It also takes the title of the show. This is possibly one of the most ritualistic works in the show. This work really is in conversation as well with the strips of sheet. And that's the thing about a lot of this work, although there's this tenderness and there's this relationship with the body, there's also quite a lot of aggression and violence, which is implicit in the work because it's implicit in the processing of the body. So I guess I duplicated that violence with the ripping, and then I thought I wasn't done with the sheets. And this is sort of described this work as a kind of lamenting apology. And I think that this is quite ritualistic of a whole lot of traditions that we've lost as part of our grieving processes. Order was one of the things that was important to me because you exist in this sort of chaotic, life is this chaotic space and death is even more chaotic, and then grieving and trying to get order, and that is one of the things that happens is you try to make sense. You need to make sense of what it is that has occurred, and for me at least, the logic of there's a lot of math, there's a lot of numbers involved, and rationalization of this highly emotive event that occurs when you lose a loved one, and the kind of contrast between the emotion and the rationality of how to make sense of it. These are journal entries. Although you read the narratives, you don't get the full picture, you get an understanding that someone is sick, is movement. But I like to suspend things. I like the fact that it's precarious. I think the precariousness of it, that this could fall down at any minute. I think there's a tension in that. So again, there's that tension between a very rational configuration, really highly emotive material. This draws very powerfully on the experience I had when I was overwhelmed by this emotion. I went to see her body. So I wanted to create this tension in this work between the violence and the aggression of the suturing into the body post-mortem is the origin, is the sewing, and it's her handwriting from the journal. So the diary entries have been grafted onto the pillow and then I've sewn into them. And it also reminded me of being a child and tracing the handwriting, trying to be a grown-up and tracing the handwriting of your parents. And daughters have this relationship with their mother where they're close and they're intimate. It's a precarious relationship, but it's an intimate relationship where they share and they bond. And a lot of the women, their stories are really graphic and visceral about that experience of the system and in the hospital system, remembering the buzz of the lights and that they were actually in the hospital with their mums. And I felt that men didn't seem to have that connection with when their parents die. They sort of, if there's a sister in particular, it's the sister's role. And certainly in my experience talking about the work and talking to men with the work, it's a woman's story. People have this experience where they come into the show and they see the Queensland Health, and it's like this jarring feeling because they remember, you never forget that experience, and a time in the hospital where something happened. So just like revisiting the story and then revisiting the story again and then sharing the story with all these other women. And bringing in the woman's work as well, which has traditionally been seen as craft. Embroidery is a traditional woman's sewing technique which has never been considered to be art up until quite recently. And by using this grid and putting these really highly personalised stories onto a clearly modernist grid in a highly minimalist format, but also it's a very personal story, and it's been sewn by hand, so they're all wonky and they're not perfect, which is the way life is. We lose that connection with death, and that is a part of life, and that was certainly something that I was interested in exploring in this project.